door! Hands up now!
Wait, this is my house. What's going on?
Now!
I live here. My kids are inside.
Stop resisting! Put your hands behind your back!
He lives there. That's his house.
Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something. Look at your front door right now. Imagine coming home after saving lives for 48 hours straight, exhausted, just wanting to see your family. Now imagine being slammed face first into your own lawn, handcuffed, while your daughter watches and films everything. Sound impossible? It happened. And the body cam footage changed everything. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And if you think no firefighter should ever be tackled in their own driveway, smash that like button and subscribe, because this story will make your blood boil. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, badge number 3847 of the Oakland Fire Department, had no idea that Thursday, September 14th, would be the day his entire life would change. At 42 years old, with 15 years of service, Marcus had saved 37 lives. He'd pulled people from burning buildings, performed CPR on strangers, talked suicidal individuals off ledges, and spent countless nights away from his family protecting a city that was supposed to protect him back. That Thursday started like dozens of others. Marcus had just finished a brutal 48-hour shift at Station 18 in East Oakland. 2 structure fires for medical emergencies, 1 vehicle extraction, and a hazmat situation had left him physically and mentally drained. His captain had sent him home early, telling him he looked like death and needed rest. Marcus didn't argue. He drove his red Chevy Silverado through the quiet streets of the Pinehurst district, a middle-class neighborhood where he and his wife Simone had bought their home 7 years earlier. The 2-story house on Laurel Avenue represented everything they'd worked for. Simone was a nurse at Highland Hospital. Together, they'd created a safe, stable life for their 12-year-old daughter Kenya, who was on the honor roll at her middle school and dreamed of becoming a doctor. Marcus pulled into his driveway at 3:47 p.m. The afternoon sun was warm, the street quiet. He was still wearing his Oakland Fire Department t-shirt with the department logo clearly visible across his chest and back. His uniform pants were wrinkled from 2 days of constant wear. His turnout gear was visible in the truck bed, and his helmet sat in the back window where it always did. He grabbed his gear bag from the passenger seat, the one with Lieutenant M. Webb, OFD stenciled in bold white letters on the side. All Marcus wanted was a shower, his wife's cooking, and maybe watching Kenya's volleyball practice later that evening. He had no idea that 3 houses down, a nervous neighbor named Patricia Simmons had called 911 20 minutes earlier. And here's where everything starts to go wrong. Keep watching, because what happens in the next 8 minutes will shock you. Patricia Simmons, a 67-year-old white woman who had lived on Laurel Avenue for 33 years, had spotted someone walking between cars parked on the street. In her call to 911, she described a black male, maybe 30s or 40s, wearing dark clothing, looking into car windows, acting suspicious. The description was vague, racially focused, and would later prove to be based on someone who lived 4 blocks away and had been checking his own car for his lost phone. But Patricia's call went into the system. And Officer Ryan Castellano, badge number 4,387 with 8 years on the Oakland Police Department, was dispatched to respond. Castellano, 34 years old, had a record that should have raised red flags years earlier. Internal Affairs had 7 formal complaints in his file. 5 involved allegations of excessive force. 6 involved people of color. But Castellano had never faced serious discipline. He knew how to write reports that justified his actions, knew which union representatives to call, and knew that most complaints disappeared into administrative files without real consequences. When Castellano turned onto Laurel Avenue, scanning for a black male in dark clothing, his eyes locked on a Marcus stepping out of his truck. The confirmation bias was instant and unconscious. Black male, dark clothing. There was Marcus, fitting the description, holding a bag, walking toward a house. What Castellano's brain failed to process was the fire department logo, the official uniform pants, the truck with FD stickers, the visible helmet, the stencil name on the gear bag. His training should have told him to observe, to verify, to think before acting. Instead, he saw what he expected to see: a suspect. Castellano pulled his patrol car to the curb directly in front of Marcus's house and activated his body cam. What happened in the next 7 minutes and 43 seconds would be viewed by over 60 million people worldwide within 2 weeks. The body cam footage starts here, and I'm warning you, what you're about to hear is going to make you furious. But you need to hear every word because this is what happened. Castellano exits his vehicle. His hand is already near his service weapon. His body language is tense, aggressive, ready for confrontation. Hey, stop right there. Hands where I can see them. Marcus turns, confused. On the body cam footage, you can clearly see his Oakland Fire Department shirt. The logo is unmistakable. His posture shows exhaustion, not aggression. Officer, I live here. I was out off shift. Is there a problem? Castellano's response is sharp, commanding. I said hands up. Drop the bag. Now. Marcus complies immediately. He sets his gear bag gently on the ground and raises both hands to shoulder height. His voice remains calm, the same steady tone he uses when talking to panicked civilians at emergency scenes. Sir, I'm Lieutenant Marcus Webb with Oakland Fire Department. This is my house. My ID is in my wallet if you'd like to see it. What happens next would be analyzed frame by use of force experts, civil rights attorneys, police training instructors, and millions of horrified viewers. Castellano advances rapidly, his hand now on his weapon. Get on the ground. On the ground now. Marcus keeps his hands visible, trying to de-escalate. Officer, please. I'm a firefighter. I'm not armed. I live here. My wife and daughter are inside. Can we just talk about? He never finishes the sentence. And this is the moment that destroyed everything. Watch this closely because this 7-second sequence is what sparked nationwide protests. Castellano rushes forward in what the later investigation would classify as a tackle takedown maneuver typically reserved for active threats or fleeing suspects. Marcus has no time to react. His hands are still raised. He's standing still. He represents zero threat. The tackle drives Marcus face first into his own lawn with a force the forensic analyst would later calculate at approximately 185 pounds of impact. The body cam captures the sickening thud of Marcus's face hitting the ground, followed by his grunt of pain and the sound of Castellano's knee slamming into his back. I'm a firefighter, Marcus shouts, his voice strained and desperate. Oakland Fire Department. Check my ID. I live here. Castellano wrenches Marcus's arms behind his back with enough force to later require medical treatment for a rotator cuff strain. The handcuffs click into place, tight enough to leave marks that would still be visible 3 days later during the medical examination. Stop resisting, Castellano shouts, even though the body cam footage clearly shows Marcus isn't resisting. He's complying, trying to turn his head to breathe, his face pressed into his own grass. Through the living room window, Simone Webb had been watching from the kitchen. She'd seen her husband pull into the driveway. She'd been seasoning chicken for dinner, planning to surprise him with his favorite meal. Then she'd heard the shouting. When she looked out and saw a police officer tackling Marcus, her world stopped. Her screams are clearly audible on the body cam as she runs outside. That's my husband. He's a firefighter. What are you doing? Get off him. Behind her, 12-year-old Kenya appears in the doorway, her phone already out, recording. The secondary footage from Kenya's perspective would later corroborate every single detail captured on Castellano's body cam. Simone runs toward them, but Castellano holds up his hand in a stop gesture. Ma'am, stay back. This is police business. Police business? Simone's voice cracks with fury and fear. That's my husband. He works for Oakland Fire. He just got home from a 48-hour shift. Look at his shirt. For the first time, Castellano actually looks at what Marcus is wearing. The body cam captures the moment perfectly, his head tilting down, his eyes focusing on the large Oakland Fire Department logo across Marcus's back. You can almost see the realization hitting him. But instead of immediately releasing Marcus and apologizing, Castellano doubles down. It's a psychological phenomenon experts would later explain, called commitment bias, where admitting an error feels more threatening than continuing the wrong course of action. I receive a call about a suspicious person in this area, Castellano says, his voice now defensive. He matches the description. Marcus, still face down on his lawn, manages to speak clearly despite the knee in his back. I'm a lieutenant with Oakland Fire. My ID is in my wallet. My wife is standing right there. Our daughter is filming you. This is our house. You just assaulted a firefighter in his own driveway for no reason. The word filming makes Castellano's head snap toward Kenya. Sure enough, she's recording everything on her phone, tears streaming down her face, but her hands steady. Put the phone down, Castellano orders. Kenya doesn't move. She's terrified, but she keeps recording because she already knows this isn't right. At 12 years old, she's watched enough news to know that cameras tell the truth when people won't. A white pickup truck pulls up and an older black man jumps out. This is Terrence Morrison, 68, a retired postal worker who's lived on Laurel Avenue for 40 years. He's known Marcus since the Webbs moved in. Officer, that's Marcus. He's a firefighter. He lives there, Terrence shouts, walking toward them with his hands visible. I'm his neighbor. He's lived here for 7 years. A white woman exits her house across the street. Dorothy Chun, 71, a retired teacher, marches over with the authority of someone who's spent decades commanding rowdy classrooms. Young man, I've lived on this street for 37 years, she tells Castellano, her voice sharp with indignation. That's Marcus Webb. He's a firefighter. He lives in that house with his wife Simone and their daughter. What on earth are you doing? Now watch what happens next, because this is where backup arrives and everything changes. Keep watching. A second patrol car pulls up and Sergeant Maria Torres steps out. Torres, 44, is a 21-year veteran with a reputation for running tight professional calls. She takes one look at the scene and her expression hardens. On the body cam, you can see her processing the information. A man in an Oakland Fire Department shirt, handcuffed face down on a residential lawn. A woman crying and shouting about her husband. A child filming. Two neighbors vouching for the man. A gear bag clearly stenciled with Lieutenant M. Webb, OFD. Officer Castellano, Torres says, her voice carrying the kind of controlled anger that's more frightening than yelling. What's the situation here? Castellano stands up, but keeps his boot near Marcus's shoulder. Responded to a suspicious person call. Subject matched the description. Became uncooperative when I attempted to make contact. Torres walks closer, looking down at Marcus, then at his shirt, then at the house, then at Simone. Ma'am, what's your name? Simone Webb, she says through tears. That's my husband, Marcus. He's a lieutenant with Oakland Fire. He just came home from a 48-hour shift. That officer tackled him in our driveway for no reason. Torres kneels down next to Marcus. Sir, what's your full name and occupation? Marcus turns his head as much as he can with his face pressed into the grass. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Oakland Fire Department, badge number 3847. 15 years of service. Station 18. I just got home from shift. My ID is in my wallet. This officer tackled me and handcuffed me in my own driveway without cause. Torres stands slowly and looks at Castellano with an expression that makes clear she knows exactly what happened here. Officer Castellano, what was the specific description from the suspicious person call? Castellano Jesetats. Black male, 30s to 40s, dark clothing, checking car doors. Torres gestures at Marcus. Does he have his hands on any car doors? Is he touching any vehicles? And what's that on his shirt? Fire department logo, Castellano admits quietly. And that bag on the ground? Says Lieutenant M. Webb, Oakland Fire Department. Torres' voice drops to something cold and dangerous. Uncuff him. Now. Castellano removes the handcuffs. Marcus sits up slowly, rubbing his wrist where the metal had bitten into his skin. His face is streaked with grass stains and dirt. There's a small cut above his eyebrow where his face hit the ground. Simone rushes to him, helping him stand. Kenya runs over, still filming, crying harder now that her father is free. Torres hands Marcus her card. Mr. Webb, I'm Sergeant Maria Torres. I need to see your identification and proof of residence. And then I'm going to need to hear exactly what happened from your perspective. Marcus pulls his wallet from his back pocket with shaking hands. His driver's license shows the Laurel Avenue address. Torres examines it, then looks at the house number. They match perfectly. I was pulling into my driveway after a 48-hour shift. Marcus says, his voice steady despite the anger and humiliation coursing through him. I grabbed my gear bag from my truck and was walking toward my front door. Officer Castellano pulled up, started shouting orders at me to put my hands up. I told him I lived here, I'm a firefighter, and asked what the problem was. He ordered me to get on the ground. When I tried to explain that this is my house and I just gotten home from work, he tackled me, forced me to the ground, and handcuffed me. My wife and daughter witnessed everything. My neighbors witnessed everything. And it's all recorded on your body cam and my daughter's phone. Torres turns to Castellano. Did you verify residence before engaging? No, ma'am. Did you observe him committing any crime? No, ma'am. But he matched the description from the call. Black male in dark clothing, Torres says flatly. That's roughly 20% of Oakland's population. Did you see him touching any vehicles? No, ma'am. Did you see him attempting to enter any property that wasn't his own? No, ma'am. Did he threaten you in any way? No, ma'am. Torres pulls out a radio. Dispatch, I need a supervisor to 2847 Laurel Avenue immediately. And give me a paramedic unit for a medical check. She turns to Marcus. Sir, I'm calling paramedics to document your injuries and make sure you're okay. I'm also calling a supervisor because this is going to be a formal complaint. What Officer Castellano did here was wrong, and you have my word that this will be investigated. Keep watching because what happens when the paramedics arrive exposes just how bad this really was. You won't believe what they find. The paramedics arrive and begin examining Marcus in his own driveway, while neighbors gather, watching in supportive silence. One paramedic checks his vitals while another photographs the injuries. Abrasions on the face, consistent with impact trauma. Contusions on both wrists from handcuffs. Patient reports pain in right shoulder, possible rotator cuff strain. Elevated blood pressure, 158/94, likely stress-induced. Elevated heart rate, 118, also likely stress-induced. The paramedic looks at Marcus with sympathy. Sir, I'd recommend you go to the ER to get that shoulder looked at and have everything properly documented. Marcus shakes his head. I just want to go inside my house with my family. By this time, Lieutenant Andrew Chong from the Oakland Police Department has arrived. Chong, a 28-year veteran who'd worked with firefighters on countless joint responses, takes one look at Marcus's fire department shirt, and the situation becomes even clearer to him. He pulls Sergeant Torres aside, and while their conversation isn't clearly audible on Castellano's body cam, Kenya's phone footage captures pieces of it. Please tell me this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. Castellano tackled a firefighter in his own driveway, based on a vague description. Jesus Christ. Is it all on camera? His body cam got everything, and the daughter's been filming on her phone. Chong walks over to Marcus, and unlike Castellano, his entire demeanor is apologetic and respectful. Lieutenant Vep, I'm Lieutenant Chong. I've worked with Oakland Fire for years. I'm so sorry this happened to you. This should never have happened, and I give you my word that this will be fully investigated. Marcus looks at him with exhausted anger. I save lives for this city. I've run into burning buildings to save people I don't even know, and I get tackled in my own driveway while my daughter watches. Chong has no good answer. He turns to Castellano, who's been standing silently by his patrol car. Officer Castellano, return to the station immediately. You're done for the day. As Castellano's body cam shuts off, the story is just beginning. But here's what Castellano didn't know. Here's what changed everything. Keep watching because this is where technology meets accountability. That evening, Simone Webb sat at her kitchen table, still shaking with fury and fear. Marcus was upstairs taking the shower he'd been dreaming about for 48 hours, but now it felt tainted. His own driveway had been turned into a crime scene. His daughter had watched her father brutalized. And for what? Coming home while black. Kenya sat across from her mother, her phone in her hands. Mom, I posted it. Simone looked up. Posted what? The video of Dad getting tackled. I posted it on TikTok and Instagram. Is that okay? Simone reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. Yes, baby. That's more than okay. Within 2 hours, Kenya's video had 50,000 views. By midnight, it had crossed 1 million. By Friday morning, news outlets were calling Simone's phone nonstop. By Friday afternoon, the Oakland Fire Department had released a statement demanding accountability and supporting one of their own. By Friday evening, the police department, under massive public pressure, released Castellano's bodycam footage. And that's when the story exploded into something unstoppable. Now watch this, because what happened next changed American policing. This is the part you need to share. The bodycam footage went viral with a speed that shocked even social media analysts. Within 72 hours, it had been viewed over 40 million times across all platforms. News networks played it on loop. It was dissected frame by frame on cable news. Civil rights organizations held press conferences demanding justice. But what made this different from other viral police misconduct videos was one specific detail. Marcus Webb was a firefighter in full uniform, clearly identifiable, coming home from saving lives. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. If this could happen to a decorated firefighter in his own driveway, it could happen to anyone. Protests began Saturday morning in Oakland. But these weren't typical protests. Firefighters from across the state showed up in their uniforms, standing in formation, silent and powerful. Images of hundreds of firefighters holding signs reading, "We save lives. Who protects us?" went viral themselves. By Sunday, protests had spread to 47 cities. Firefighters in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, and Atlanta marched in solidarity. The Firefighters Union released a national statement condemning what had happened to Marcus and calling for comprehensive police reform. Monday morning, Oakland's mayor held an emergency press conference. Standing beside her were the police chief, the fire chief, and representatives from the city council. What happened to Lieutenant Marcus Webb is unacceptable, inexcusable, and will not be tolerated, the mayor said, her voice firm. Officer Castellano has been suspended without pay pending a full investigation. We are committed to accountability and reform. But by then, the damage was done. The footage was everywhere, and no amount of damage control could change what millions of people had watched with their own eyes. The public outrage was immediate and massive. Officer Ryan Castellano was suspended without pay by Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning. The police chief held a press conference at noon, apologizing to Marcus and promising a full investigation, but the damage was already done. The footage was everywhere, and no amount of damage control could change what millions of people had watched with their own eyes. Marcus Webb filed his federal lawsuit on Tuesday morning. His attorney, Cher Martinez, was a civil rights specialist who'd won landmark cases against police departments across California. She laid out the charges with surgical precision: excessive force without justification, battery and assault, false arrest, and false imprisonment, violation of civil rights under color of law, intentional infliction of emotional distress, violation of Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable seizure. The lawsuit named Officer Ryan Castellano personally and the Oakland Police Department institutionally, demanding $8.5 million in total damages, $3 million from the department for systemic failures and inadequate training, and $5.5 million from Castellano personally for his actions. Because Castellano was named as an individual defendant for intentional misconduct, his personal assets were now at risk in ways that terrified him. Police are usually protected by qualified immunity for actions taken in the line of duty, but that protection evaporates when the officer's conduct is so clearly unlawful that no reasonable officer would believe it was legal. The lawsuit included every second of bodycam footage, every frame of Kenya's video, written statements from Simone, from neighbors Terrence Morrison and Dorothy Chun, medical records documenting Marcus's injuries, and expert testimony from use of force specialists who would testify that Castellano's actions violated every standard of reasonable policing. Martinez held her own press conference. Lieutenant Webb was attacked in his own driveway for the crime of being black in America. He was in full uniform, clearly identifiable as a firefighter, carrying official department gear on his own property. There was no crime, no reasonable suspicion, no legal justification for any contact whatsoever. Officer Castellano saw a black man and made assumptions based purely on race. Those assumptions led to violence. And now, those assumptions will lead to accountability. The internal affairs investigation took 3 weeks, and what they found destroyed any defense Castellano might have had. This is the part that shows the pattern. Keep watching. The internal affairs report was 127 pages long and devastating in its conclusions. Officer Castellano had no legal basis for the stop. The suspicious person call described someone checking car doors. Castellano never observed Marcus near any vehicles except his own truck. He never saw Marcus touch any car doors. He never saw Marcus attempt to enter any property except his own home. No crime had been committed. No reasonable suspicion existed. No legal justification for any contact whatsoever could be established. The report also uncovered Castellano's history, a pattern that should have ended his career years earlier. 14 total civilian complaints over 8 years. 11 of those complaints involved people of color. 7 included allegations of excessive force. 5 included allegations of racial profiling. 0 resulted in significant discipline. The pattern was undeniable and damning. Castellano had a documented history of seeing people of color as threats, of using force first, and asking questions later, of escalating situations that should have been simple conversations. Internal Affairs interviewed Castellano 3 times. His story changed each time. First, he claimed Marcus had been acting aggressively. The Bodycam footage showed this was a lie. Then he claimed Marcus had refused to comply with orders. The footage showed Marcus had his hands up and was trying to explain the situation. Finally, Castellano claimed he feared for his safety because Marcus was a large black male. That last statement sealed his fate. Marcus is 5 feet 10 inches and 185 pounds, hardly threatening, especially when standing with his hands raised, clearly exhausted, wearing a fire department uniform. The Internal Affairs report recommended termination. The police chief accepted the recommendation. On October 3rd, Ryan Castellano was fired from the Oakland Police Department with cause, meaning he lost his pension and benefits. But that was just the beginning of the consequences. Now here's where it gets really ugly. The criminal charges, the civil trial, the complete destruction of everything Castellano had. Watch this. The Alameda County District Attorney filed criminal charges on October 10th. Assault by a public officer, a felony. Battery causing injury, a misdemeanor. False imprisonment, a misdemeanor. Deprivation of rights under color of authority, a felony. The trial lasted 6 days. The prosecution played the Bodycam footage 11 times. They played Kenya's phone video 7 times. They put Marcus on the stand, where he described the humiliation of being tackled in front of his daughter. They put Simone on the stand, where she described her terror watching her husband brutalized. They put Kenya on the stand, where the 12-year-old described filming her father's assault because I knew people wouldn't believe it unless they saw it. The defense tried to argue that Castellano had made an honest mistake in a tense situation, but the footage destroyed that argument. Marcus wasn't tense. Marcus was calm, compliant, and clearly identifiable as a firefighter. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Castellano guilty on all counts. Judge Patricia Hammond sentenced him to 18 months in county jail and 3 years probation. In her sentencing statement, she said, "You wore a badge that gave you authority to protect and serve. Instead, you used that badge to assault an innocent man in his own driveway based purely on the color of his skin. You betrayed your oath, your department, and the community you were supposed to protect." Castellano served 14 months and was released as a convicted felon who could never work in law enforcement again. But the civil lawsuit was still pending, and that's where the real financial destruction happened. This is the part that bankrupted him. Watch closely because this shows what happens when you can't hide behind qualified immunity. The Oakland Police Department settled their portion of the lawsuit 9 months after filing. They agreed to pay Marcus $3.5 million and implement comprehensive reforms. Mandatory bias training for all officers. Stricter oversight of officers with multiple complaints. Bodycam footage review for all use of force incidents. Community Oversight Committee with real authority. But Marcus's attorney pursued Castellano personally for the remaining $5 million in damages. And this is where Castellano's life completely fell apart. Castellano had approximately $420,000 in total assets. His house had $240,000 in equity. Retirement savings totaled $95,000 before termination. Joint savings with his wife came to $48,000. Vehicles had $37,000 combined equity. It wasn't nearly enough to cover the judgment against him. Castellano tried to file for bankruptcy protection, but the court blocked it. Under federal law, judgment from intentional torts like assault, battery, and civil rights violations cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. The debt follows you forever. The court ordered the seizure of Castellano's assets. His house was sold in a forced sale that yielded $215,000 after fees. His retirement accounts were emptied. His savings were taken. His vehicles were repossessed. And because he was married, his wife Jennifer's jointly held assets were also attached to satisfy the judgment. Jennifer Castellano had been married to Ryan for 16 years. She was a dental hygienist who'd worked hard, saved carefully, and built a life she was proud of. In a matter of months, she lost everything. Her home of 12 years, her financial security, the college fund she'd been building for their 2 children since birth, her car, because the loan was in both their names, her savings account because it was joint. By month 8 of the legal proceedings, Jennifer filed for divorce. In her filing, she cited irreconcilable differences and financial devastation caused by defendants' criminal actions. She took their children, Emma, 15, and Tyler, 13, and moved in with her sister in Sacramento. She took what little remained of her separate assets and started rebuilding a life that didn't include Ryan. The children barely spoke to their father anymore. They'd been humiliated at school when classmates showed them the viral video. They'd endured bullying and taunts. Emma had to switch schools mid-year because the harassment got so bad. Tyler developed anxiety and needed counseling. Both kids blamed their father, and they weren't wrong too. After paying $420,000 from seized assets, Castellano still owed $4.58 million. And this is where the wage garnishment started. This is the part that never ends. At 36 years old, Ryan Castellano found himself working at a warehouse distribution center for $16.50 an hour. It was the only job he could get as a convicted felon with no specialized skills beyond law enforcement. Under California law, up to 25% of his wages could be garnished to pay the judgment. Every paycheck, $412, was automatically deducted and sent to Marcus Webb. Castellano took home roughly $1,250 per month after garnishment and taxes. He lived in a studio apartment in a rough part of town, ate ramen noodles and dollar store groceries, took the bus because he couldn't afford a car, and watched his ex-wife rebuild a life on social media. A life where she smiled again, where the kids looked happy, where there was no mention of him. The math was brutal and inescapable. At $412 per month, Castellano was paying approximately $4,944 per year toward the $4.58 million judgment. At that rate, it would take him 926 years to pay off the debt. He would be making payments for the rest of his life. The garnishment would follow him to any job he ever got. If he tried to hide income, he'd face additional legal consequences. If he tried to leave the state, the judgment would follow him. There was no escape, no relief, no second chance. In 5 years, Castellano had paid $24,720 toward the judgment. He owed $4,555,280. He would still owe $4,530,560 in another 5 years. He would die owing Marcus Webb millions of dollars. Meanwhile, Marcus and Simone still lived in their home on Laurel Avenue. Marcus had become a national advocate for police reform and body cam accountability. He traveled to police departments across the country, showing the footage as a training example of what happens when officers let bias override law and common sense. He spoke at the International Association of Firefighters Convention, where he received a standing ovation. He testified before the California state legislature on police reform bills. He appeared on national news programs, always calm, always articulate, always focused on change rather than revenge. When reporters asked him if he felt vindicated by the lawsuit victory and Castellano's conviction, Marcus gave the same answer every time. I didn't want to be vindicated. I wanted to do yard work in my own house without being treated like a criminal. I wanted to come home from saving lives without being assaulted in my driveway while my daughter watched. I wanted to live in a country where the uniform I wear protecting others actually protects me too. But if my experience can change how officers think before they act, if it can save someone else from being tackled in their own driveway, if it can make one cop pause and actually see the human being in front of them instead of a stereotype, then maybe something good came from something terrible. Kenya, now 17, spoke at her high school about her experience. She talked about filming her father's assault and making the split-second decision to post it online. She talked about the responsibility of being a witness and the power of technology to expose truth. I was 12 years old, and I knew what that officer did was wrong, she told an auditorium full of students. I knew nobody would believe us if I didn't record it, and I knew that staying silent wouldn't protect my dad or anyone else. Sometimes doing the right thing means being brave when you're terrified. Sometimes it means making sure the truth can't be hidden. The Bodycam footage remained online, a permanent record accessible to anyone who wanted to see it. It had been viewed over 85 million times across all platforms. It was shown in police academies as an example of what not to do. It was analyzed in law schools as a case study in civil rights litigation. It was discussed in sociology classes as evidence of systemic racism. And Ryan Castellano spent the rest of his life paying for those 7 minutes and 43 seconds, one garnished paycheck at a time, in a warehouse far from the badge and authority he once abused. The lesson was brutal and simple. The camera sees everything. The law protects everyone. And consequences, when they finally come, can take absolutely everything you have. This story proves that accountability is possible when evidence is undeniable. If you know someone who needs to see how one moment of bias can destroy lives on both sides of the badge, share this video now. What reforms do you think could have prevented this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because this conversation matters. And if you believe technology is changing how justice works in America, hit subscribe because we're bringing you more stories where the truth gets caught on camera and nobody walks away the same. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from viewers around the world. And if this story moved you, hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories.